What's up, bikers? I'm Robert. This is the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream, episode 129. Today, we're talking to EXT Racing Shox, the EXT USA distributor, and they also run the suspension syndicate. So they do all kinds of things suspension, not only EXT, but they're two separate companies. So one way or another, we're going to be talking a lot about suspension here. But before we get started, let's just say a few things. First of all, swing by Instagram or Facebook. Give me a follow over there. That's awesome. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, subscribe, do all the things. If you're listening to a podcast, write a 5-star review over on Apple. That would be rad. It tells the algorithm that things are going good. And if there's somewhere else you can write a review, do that too. If it's not going to be a 5-star review, probably not worth your time. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, I really appreciate everybody coming to hang out. Those of you guys that support me on Patreon, thank you. You are the ones that really make this happen. It means a lot. So if any of you that are listening, you want to help contribute, it's as cheap as $1 a month or whatever you want to throw at it. So there's some other perks over there, like got some discounts with some of the people I've had on the show. And well, you can go over there and check it out. Pretty over there. Just look up B1KER B1KER over there on Patreon, and that'll be that. Anyways, I'll go ahead and bring Cody back online. And how's it going, Cody?
What's up, Robert? Good, man. How are you?
Dude, living the dream, man. Definitely, it has been hot as hell out here in California. You're in Utah, right?
I am, yeah, right in Salt Lake. And it's been brutal hot here, too. That's why I have not been here much.
Yeah. Doing much riding?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've been trying to. We just got back from Nationals, which was super fun. We were out there for a whole week. We had like the whole tent set up and the crew out and a bunch of people racing, and riding was good. We brought a homie out there that's like helping us do some videography work and did a bunch of filming, and it was a solid week. Yeah.
Right on, man. So talk to me about EXT. They're a new company. Not many people have heard of them, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. So they're like relatively a new company, right? EXT has been around for about a decade. I think they just had their 10-year this last year. And then they got, but they've been building suspension for like rally sports, UTV racing, some Baja stuff, a number of different.
Do like all kinds of stuff, not just mountain bikes.
No, yeah, I mean the mountain bike thing was kind of just for fun from a few guys that worked there. I think originally, they built their first mountain bike damper roughly 7 years ago, and then wasn't until. Go ahead.
They're overseas too, right? Isn't that where
they're in northern Italy.
Italy, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right on. So somebody works there, is into mountain biking. He's like, "Hey, we do suspension. Let's give it a shot."
Yeah.
So how does it go? Because honestly, like I never even heard of them before I walked by your tent when I bumped into you guys at Sedona. Mm-hmm. And how did it get from northern Italy to being in the US?
So when they released their V2, like the story of V2 is like version 2 damper. Mm-hmm. That was when they started to be spec'd on different things. They were spec'd on the Geometron, for example. That's how they started to come into the US, was on that bike specifically, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a ton of support necessarily or fan base for the first couple of years. People that were, diehard into the Geometron scene obviously knew from the very beginning what was going on. Mm-hmm. They had a guy named Andrew Brennan who ran a really top-notch tuning company out of California. He's mainly into auto, mm-hmm. but he's a mountain biker and is way into it. And so he was like supporting the products for a while. And so I first saw them on when the V2 came into the States. Like saw mm-hmm. the damper and got to check it out and feel it. And then didn't really like be like, oh damn, this is something like serious, until the V3 came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So basically, at that point, there are only coils that they were releasing at that point.
And they're still only coils.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. You've seen like when I saw you at Sea Otter, we had the air damper.
Uh-huh.
And that's still in the works. It's coming down the pipe. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I was gonna say I thought I saw some kind of air shock that they were showing pictures of from Eurobike.
Yeah, same thing. Just like Sea Otter, they showed it at Eurobike. I think the aesthetic of the design has been, changed a little bit since Sea Otter. But we'll probably have that available in the U.S. We're thinking like early next year, spring maybe.
Interesting. Yeah. And they're starting to cut some more deals to be like OEM on bikes now too. I saw there were like some different builds that they were included on.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty rad.
Sure. Yeah, it's good.
So
the OEM thing's a little tricky, especially with like a boutique custom tuned product.
Yeah.
But as long as like you do it in a way that you don't spread yourself too thin, it's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, it's custom tuned. So, I guess you would say like it's very similar for people that don't know or haven't seen it. It's like similar to what you would expect out of like a push, basically, right?
Yeah, in a lot of sense. Like there's been a lot of things taken into consideration before we send the dampers out. Yeah.
But sure. I think the biggest thing, I guess, is the price difference. That I mean, it's definitely on the cheaper side compared to like what a push would cost. For people that are curious.
It is and isn't. Like I think they're getting to the same price. We had the V3s at 1,100. The E-Story is at 1,250. The MX is at 1,150. I think pushes are like float right in the 1,200 range. So it's.
I was thinking they were a little more than that for some reason. So
yeah, they might have one that's more, but I'm not.
Yeah. So either way,
have some of the best too, especially some of their ones that they've done in like bulk for like a certain frame design.
How do people know whether or not these shocks will fit their bike? Like, is there a tune for it
or? We can fit them to just about any bike out there. I believe on our website we've got a small list of frames that we have had clearance issues with, where like something rubs or it doesn't bottom out correctly, or like the piggyback touches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the most part, they can fit on most bikes.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. I have that V3 Bronson, and when I was putting it on, it was definitely like you had to get it in there exactly right to get it. I was like, man, is this the wrong shock? I don't know if I have the right one. But then all of a sudden I got it, and I was like, oh, okay. And when I looked at everything, though, it's clearing everything. It's not rubbing anything. But man,
you got the one that like pierces the tube, or what?
Yeah, it kind of goes through the seat tube on the bottom there. So.
Yeah.
It was definitely like I was sweating a little bit. I was like, do I got it upside down? Like, what am I doing? Yeah, kind of funny. So
well, it's hard. There's so many bikes out there. We can't possibly test everything. So like, we have a big thing on our website of a disclaimer, basically being like, when you get the damper, take the spring off, like fully compress your suspension, make sure there's no clearance issues, make sure nothing's rubbing. Right, because like there's all these unforeseen variables with like different frame sizes, aftermarket links nowadays, tire sizes. Like,
I'm sure they're. I'm not very good at directions, man. I just took the thing out of the box.
Cool sand. Here we go.
Right.
You getting along with it?
Oh man, let me tell you, I for a long time was really afraid to try a coil just because. The cost, to go out and to spend that kind of money, that's a big difference from what an air can would cost. that
were you always running like inline air shocks or?
yeah. So, but I always knew all these other big guys that were like, dude, I'm telling you, man, and not even necessarily big guys, like just guys that shred too. They're like, dude, get a coil. It's worth, like, you're not going to think twice about it. And I'd hear it over and over again. And when this opportunity came up to try yours out, I was like, oh, this is sweet. And I will tell you, like I told you when I think we bumped into each other in like Sea Otter, the first ride that I took it on, it was kind of like this like flowy thing, and I'm not like good at like getting suspension dialed, you know. So I'm just like, yeah, whatever it is, that's cool. And I just felt like it had a little tiny bit of like lag, but like it wasn't quite as poppy. But the first ride, like the next ride that I went on was more chunky, and I just remember going through this turn, and it was all like brake bumped up and like nasty, and I remember like pulling, like gaining speed through the corner, and my rear wheel just feeling so planted that I just started laughing out loud. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then after I talked to you about the poppy thing, and you were like, oh yeah, just click this and turn that, and I'm sure I could have looked it up online. You like did 3 clicks, and it's been perfect ever since then. Like I am
made a little poppier for you, a little snappier.
Yeah. I am 100% sold on coil. Everybody I talk to, I'm telling them about it. And I mean, to the point where I didn't really want to, like, wasn't super crazy about looking at the new Bronson. But knowing that was designed for more of the way that a coil operates, I was like, man, I'm buying a new bike. Like, your coil made me want to buy a new bike.
Well, that's funny because we're always like, you're thinking about buying a new bike, just buy this shock. It'll make your bike like new.
It did, but then I'm like, man, if it's this much better and my bike's not even engineered for a coil, I'm like, oh my god, this thing's gonna just like knock my socks off anywhere else.
So you never ridden a coil shock before, or
no? I think might have ridden a demo here or there, and it wasn't really like anything that like I just jumped on and was like, oh wow, that's amazing. And I would say for me though, like it really usually takes me to ride my own trails. So if I was on a demo or somewhere else, and who knows what else was up with that bike, like it could be like, hey, the coil's great, but the brakes suck, and that's all I remember is the brakes suck. You know what I mean? So, but to be able to have it and be on my local trails and see the difference in spots where I knew like, oh, this spot normally I would break through here because it'd be so much trail chatter. And with that coil, maybe you can explain it, but somehow or another, my rear wheel just feels like it's like glued compared to like popping around.
I mean, that damper in particular is very controlled, you know, especially at high speeds. It's very predictable. Coils in general, I think one of the bigger benefits of them is that you have consistent performance through like a long ride. You don't have to deal with like your air can heating up or getting sticky. They typically have better small bump sensitivity, plusher, more planted feel overall compared to an air shock. I've been a big coil fan for forever, really. Always been since like Romic was a thing. You know?
Yeah, I pretty much just drank the Kool-Aid, dude. Like I'm 100% in at this point. Like
that's cool, man. Yeah, this damper, like your EXT's damper, is like really sets itself apart from other coil shocks in the market. I think just because it is very well balanced, and that it can be very poppy, playful. You can pull. Have good energy return, pull back from the trail which you're putting into it, but also you maintain pretty good small bump sensitivity, good traction, and then it's a race damper, man. Like the faster you go and the harder you push it, the more it's going to be there for you. So. Yeah,
it definitely has completely changed my riding, like on a lot of stuff where
that's cool.
Where and I'd say at this point, or not at this point, like overall, my favorite kind of riding is more chunky, technical kind of stuff. I'm not super big on jumps and like tables and all that stuff. Like I'll play around on that, but
That's what I like too. I like everything, but I like techie stuff, techie steep
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and that techie stuff, it's just it really shines. The other thing that I was surprised about, people always say with coils is that they don't climb well, but the lockout on that thing, do all coils have lockouts?
Not all of them, but a lot of them do.
Yeah.
I think that damper pedals well, even open.
Yeah.
It's very efficient. It uses its travel very efficiently. Recovers very quickly. Like you just have a higher dynamic ride height compared to most things. And then if you're flipping the switch, for sure, man.
Yeah, the lockout on that thing is definitely like it's stiff. Like you can definitely, like, if you hit some jump and like you have a little surprise downhill and you're like, oh wow, like that thing's tight. But,
well, and that switch is on its own independent shim stack, so we can valve that however you want, So like we valve it for some people to be like a jump setting, so it's not as stiff as the one that you've got. It's just like a little bit stiffer to get a little bit more pop. We've got some guys down in like Virgin, for example, that use it as like their huck setting. Because like you don't have to worry about blowing up anything. You can go huge with that little lock switch flipped, and it'll just give you a little bit more. And then we can tune it firmer than what you've got. Some people are into it. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's nice to have your rear wheel tracking the ground while you pedal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you want a little bit just to like eat up whatever the little chatter is that you're going over while you're climbing or whatever. But I would say if I had any complaint, the only thing I have is about that switch is like it doesn't seem like it always is locked into whichever spot it's in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe just me or something. Maybe, I don't know. Like,
no, it's probably starting to wear out. Like the little, like there's these little balls. They're like your detent balls, and they call them these like little aluminum grooves. Whatever the groove that it's supposed to sit in might be starting to wear out.
Just
see that happen from time to time. I think that was a demo shock we gave you, or is that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's demo.
Yeah.
So.
I just need a little piece replaced in it. Yeah, we see that. Not very many people complain about it, so we don't always replace that when they come in for service. Unless somebody's like, I want my clicks to be defined again. But,
so when people buy this shock, I don't know how you size a coil other than the spring. So is the coil, like, is the shock itself, could you put that on any bike? Or is it like how there's an eye-to-eye on an air shock or a stroke or whatever? Like, is it different versions of that coil for different bikes, or is it one and you just like adjust it to fit right?
So I mean, we can basically put, so we have 3 different dampers, right? And we can put them on just about any bike. We different eye-to-eyes, different stroke lengths. Doesn't matter really.
Okay, so you just like, because I noticed like on there it's like a big threaded section, right?
Yeah.
So is that how you set like the eye-to-eye, or how does that work?
No. So like I have a damper right here, but like, so your eye-to-eye is here. So if you were to change the eye-to-eye, you'd have to replace the damper tube, the rebound needle, damper shaft, rebound needle, damper tube, HBC tube, potentially the reservoir. But you just like put shorter pieces on everything, shrink everything to size.
I see.
Yeah.
So you could just they could reach out to you and be like, hey, I had this bike and now I have this bike, and
and most of the time it's pretty cost effective to do that. The only time it's not really worth it is if you're going from like an eyelet to a trunnion and your stroke's different too, different eye to eye. At that point, you've replaced so much of the shock, you should just sell it and get a new one.
Just sell it. Yeah.
But yeah, eye to eyes are like really, strokes are really easy. Like if you buy a damper and you're just changing the stroke, not a big deal. Eye to eye is a little more expensive, still doable. Yeah.
How does it work for people getting service? I mean, not all like most bike shops have somebody who knows how to work on like Fox or something like that. You know,
yeah, it's becoming. I mean, a few years ago, there weren't any shops that worked on anything,
right?
And they all had to be sent into a service center. It's becoming more common to have somebody in your town or somebody at least in your state that can rebuild your Fox shock, your Rock shock.
Mm-hmm.
The EXT stuff at this point in time, we're the only ones doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are opening up trail labs coming up here this November. We've also got a shop in California. We're going to open up a shop in Oregon. Try to at least give the country some options that are within like a day or two shipping, you know.
So EXT's opening up like a dedicated suspension shop. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, like right now we're the ones supporting them in the country, but we're going to open up a few more around the country to try to widen the net, make people feel comfortable that like their product supported somewhere close to them. Yeah. It's a boutique product. It's hard to like. There's only so many shops around that are like to a certain level of servicing something like this, and so we're going to be like really particular and careful who we open up, and probably only open up a handful in the country, but I think it'll help a lot, you know. Yeah,
definitely. I mean at the end of the day though, like you said, it's a boutique part, so I mean, even if it was still having to be shipped to Utah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, and we try to make it pretty easy. Like I feel like we're really easy to get a hold of. We give you your service date way ahead of time, so you know when you need to get it here by. We usually only need it for like 72 hours roughly.
So basically, people could call you up, be like, "Hey, when's the next appointment?" You get an appointment, then they could still ride their bike for a little bit, and then ship it to you in like 2 days or something like that, and then it's there for a couple days. So it sounds like it's about a little over a week turnaround, kind of basically.
Yeah, usually. And I've been working in the mountain bike scene like literally forever. Like for my perspective, right? And yeah, I mean, I think we're doing it pretty good right now. I feel pretty good about it. Like I know how everyone's operating and kind of what the normal expectation is, and yeah, I feel pretty good about it. There's always room to improve, and it's like a huge learning process. Like, I've never ran a distribution company before, but we got a good crew here. I've got good partners. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as like the turnaround time goes, I think that it doesn't really like I don't know. At least for somebody like me, I've been around for a while too, and I mean, I used to ride a lefty fork, and there was either send it to Cannondale or some dude back in New York, and that was like it, So it was like either.
Still, there's not very many people doing lefties. We're doing lefties, but not very many people doing them.
You guys are doing lefties?
Dude, at Syndicate, we do basically like everything you can imagine, except for a couple like really off the wall things. The only big brand we don't service is Push. But they like as far as getting a push shock service, it's either them or it's Fluid Focused. As far as I know, those are the only two in the country.
Yeah, so it's the same deal there. I mean, so like if you're buying a high-end coil, this is what you're getting, man. But I mean, there's not a whole lot like what kind of things do you see end up getting serviced on those? Like,
I mean, it's just like any other product. You need to service it at least annually, just to ensure that you don't burn any components up. You see like random things happen, just like anything, where you get a leak or something gets aerated or whatever. But for the most part, they hold up really well. Like compared to everything else we're working on, they don't typically like just fail, right? Like a lot of shocks out there, like you just lose damping. Or like all of a sudden it turns into like this sloshy thing. Like it's very obvious. Like these kind of just keep working for the most part. And so because of that, I feel like people just keep running them, and sometimes people run them a little too long, and they end up like burning up components.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high-end, super expensive damper. Even if it still works, make sure you service it once a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you burn up little pieces inside, they're expensive probably.
What's going on inside of there? I mean, is it like because in my head, dude, I am like, I know nothing about suspension except for like get on and ride, right? So like to me, I'm like, oh, it's a coil. It's just all metal and a spring, right? Is there like oil and stuff like that going on in there? Like what's?
Yeah, man, there's a lot going on in there for sure.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So when you first, I mean, you're running the suspension syndicate, so you're doing plenty of suspension stuff for quite some time. What was it that caught your eye about EXT that made you like decide, hey man, I think this is something I need to get involved in?
Well, the first thing that caught my eye was that it was just something I hadn't seen before. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You see it and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like aesthetically, it looks really good. So then you start looking into it, and once you realize what's going on, like, damn, dude, this is like ahead of the curve of everything that everyone's doing. Like, why have I not seen this? Who's supporting this? These questions start going through your head. In Suspension Syndicate, as like a startup suspension company, we were doing everything we could to try to like align ourselves with reputable companies that were doing things a little differently, that were kind of pushing the bar.
Right.
We work with Vorsprung, with Diaz out of Durango, a couple other guys. And so we saw this and we're like, I wonder what's going on here. This is something that we would love to very least like provide support for.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of looked into it and figured out there was at that time they didn't have like a U.S. distribution company. There wasn't like a distributor or somebody that was really pushing the product, marketing it,
right,
supporting it to the level that it needed to be a viable option in the U.S. market audience. And so yeah, I mean, the opportunity was just kind of there, and we were in a good place to just see if it would go.
Yeah. See how it would go.
Yeah.
So you said that there's 3 different models. How does a person know which model like they need?
So we got for the mountain bike, we got the Arma, the Storia, and the E-Storia. So the E-Storia the Storia is kind of like our bread and butter shock. That's like the enduro shock, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's got the pro pedal switch. It's got all the features: independent high and low speed compression, hydraulic bottom control, rebound adjustment. So that's the one that most people are running. The Arma is, I like to think of it as like their race damper.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think of it as like their downhill damper. Mm-hmm. I think it's a race damper. It's the lightest. It doesn't have a switch. I feel like if you're in race mode, you're not flipping a switch.
Yeah, right. Hang on a second. Let me lock this out.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
Instead of having the climb switch, it has an externally adjustable hydraulic bottom control. So where the Storia has that feature, it's fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a velocity dependent, sure, but the Arma, you can like adjust the threshold of where you enter that at.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit more of adjustable. That's my favorite damper. The Arma's like the shit, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like sometimes I'll flip a switch, but honestly, not very often. Like not where I live. I can see if you're in certain areas where you're climbing like huge fire roads all day long to get to where you're going, and then you just drop. But here it's like Utah's like a lot of ups, a lot of downs, down to up. Like we're just yeah.
It's kind of like Sedona is, like up down the whole time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we spent a ton of time in southern Utah, which is very similar to Sedona.
Yeah, like my ride on Sunday, we climbed for like 10 miles. and then we descended for like 12. You know what I mean? So it was
totally.
It was like, it makes sense, but like I could see riding somewhere like what you're talking about. There's
am I going to flip my switch like 20 times in a ride?
Yeah, no. Like my old shock, I never flipped it at all. Just because I was freaking lazy, and I also would forget which way was which. So but yeah, like this one I definitely like. I feel like maybe the way that I like my rebound while I'm like smashing is a little faster. So I think when I'm climbing, it sometimes it'll feel a little bouncy because I have that turned up so fast. You know what I mean? But when I'm like freaking hauling balls down the hill, like it's where I want it to be, and that really means more to me than having to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I feel like with the bouncing, a lot of it is like linkage design, pedal technique.
Yeah.
There's like a number of factors. If you compare like how the EXT damper pedals open compared to like any other coil damper, it's really controlled.
Oh, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I'm just like to me, it was like, oh, well, I can hit this switch and it's not like that anymore. Exactly. So, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, well, I might as well do that, So. And when you said pedal technique, I guarantee you I have zero of that. So like,
if I was like, that's a thing? Wrong, what do you mean? I'm mashing up the hill.
Right? I get pretty much my pedal technique is put my feet on there and smash. So
try not to keel over. That's
right.
As far as I'm going with it.
Right? Yeah. So then you have the E-Story. Is that like rated for e-bikes or something like that?
Well, yeah. So it's marketed as an e-damper, mainly because it's super burly. It's steel shaft, reinforced collars. It has a heavier base tune for the most part, like as far as like where we start tuning them. But we have a ton of people run them on all kinds of bikes. I was running it on the Canfield Lithium. The damper kills it. It's basically like, as far as all of our damper options, it's got the most going on.
Yeah.
It's got the switch. It's got the external hydraulic bottom control. It's got an internal negative coil for like top out and slow speed, small bump sensitivity. It's got a different mid valve piston for a little bit more oil flow. It's overall like a little plusher at slow speeds, but still has the stability, control, support that you need once you start cooking. It's a killer damper, man. You can run it on any bike. It's a little heavier. Not everybody needs all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be like better for a guy that's like really heavy? Would like that be something that they would look at, like even if they weren't riding an e-bike, or is it just would it be overkill at that point? Like, doesn't really matter.
No, I mean, totally. Right. We got a ton of people running them on all kinds of bikes that are not e-bikes. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what you go with. If you're a heavy guy or a light guy, like we can tune the damper to you. And we're not having, dampers bend or break or fail. Even like the small, the V3 Storia.
Yeah.
The big guy on a bike with a yoke is not damaging any of our stuff.
So how does the process go? I mean, because my communication with you guys, I'm assuming was a little different than it would be for a customer. So like,
oh no, that's how everyone comes and approaches us actually.
So like,
smiles.
Right? They just tell you like how much they weigh and like how they ride, or like how do you go about like making a tune for somebody?
Yeah, so on our website we've got like a pretty straightforward form you can fill out. It's just like your weight, your bike, your level of aggressiveness, a couple other questions, and we're able to dial it in pretty well from that. I'd say like 90% of the time, if not more.
Yeah.
Every now and then you get people that are outside of the ordinary or have like very specific needs or are really pushing the envelope or are really not.
Yeah. I would imagine it's so like skill set is so in your own mind. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
the hardest thing to totally, man. Like everyone's a 7.
Right? Yeah. Like in my mind, it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, 5 years ago, I thought I was going as fast as I could possibly go on, I don't know, let's just say one of my main downhill trails here at home. And it's like now I'm riding that trail in half the time. You know what I mean? Where I thought it was a 10-minute trail. I'm like, no, it's a 5-minute trail. And then I still have like buddies that are like, well, I'm sub 5. I'm like, well, fuck you. You know, like,
Sure.
But yeah, it's like that's the part where I feel like, man, like you ask anybody like, hey, are you aggressive rider? They're like, yeah, I'm aggressive. And like, I don't know how you
Well, it's tricky, yeah. And like I said, most of the time we get it right, but in the times we don't, we do offer to retune the damper at no cost.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you get into like working with somebody that has like a really specific need for what they're after and damper performance and consistency, that's when I think it kind of gets fun, because then it turns into like a conversation and you kind of get to go back and forth and try to figure out like what this person needs by the words he's saying, which are at times ambiguous and open for interpretation, and how to translate that into what's happening and get it back to them and wait for feedback, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I've probably been a shitty person to work with then, because I'm like clueless. I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
No, I think it's fun, man. I enjoy it. That's my favorite part these days in like suspension work, is custom tuning and trying to figure out how to get people on like the best setup for them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's more tuning that could have been done to the air shocks that I've used in the past, but the difference in riding this coil and every shock that I've had in the past is like they're not even on the same platform. Like it is unbelievable.
Well, dude, when we get the air shock out, and we'll send it to you and then we'll revisit, you know?
Yeah. You guys have a fork too, right? Doesn't EXT have a fork? Is that something they're selling in the US?
Gnarly, dude. Yeah, we have forks in stock, 130 to 170, 29, 44 offset. It's very similar to the shock, where it really excels if you're somebody that's kind of pushing it. It's their pedigrees in racing. Just have to remember that, and all of their design shows that.
So is the fork run with springs as well, or?
At this point, we've got a air system. Yeah, it's a double positive air system. That has like a small valve that opens to charge the negative every time the fork reaches full extension. At the end of the air rod, it's got a small coil to absorb small bump turbulence as you move through the travel. That way, anywhere in the stroke, even if you're like packing up in the mids, you can still, every time that wheel is moving directions, dropping back down, is kind of making that little coil move and doing its thing, you know?
Oh, wow.
We'll have a coil conversion and option for the Era sometime. Maybe this year.
Yeah. That I was reading a review on that fork just recently, and the guy was saying like this is the best fork that he's ever taken, like right out of the box.
Yeah, if you can get it right, like if you can get the settings right and the air spring right, it's very similar to the damper, where there's like something kind of magical about it. You're just like, this works so well, and it's so confidence inspiring, and I can push it through anything, and like it's bottomless, and like it's never harsh, and it's like amazing, right? The fork has been a little more challenging to get right for everybody. A lot of people find it more time consuming to get
it
all the forks worked out. Like when we nail it right out of the box, dude, it's like sick, right? But with the fork, it's not always that way. The forks in general, there's a lot of variables, you know. Homie's riding way over the bars, somebody's riding behind the bars, somebody comes from a moto background, so they're pushing into things.
Right.
Guy comes from a cross country background, so he's just letting his tire do its thing, and he's kind of paying attention to the seat. Like it's just, yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. I also don't have any clue how to work my fork, so maybe it is amazing to me that I've made it this far into riding and still have like zero freaking knowledge of how suspension works. So I
I don't know that much about your background. You worked in like mountain bike shops and stuff, or what's your?
No, I've never worked in any shops or anything. I've just been riding all my life, man. I started riding like BMX when I was a kid in the 80s, and I got into mountain biking in the early 90s, and I've took a little break from mountain biking for a little while, and then came back into it in like 2006 or something like that, and
took a break as the full suspension bikes kind of hit the market and were really bad.
Yeah. Like I went from
came back when we started to figure it out a little.
Yeah, well, when I was first riding mountain bikes, like they were all rigid. And I'll tell you a story, man. When I got back into mountain biking, I was like, dude, I'm gonna go to the shop and I'm gonna spend like $2,000. I'm gonna get like a badass bike. Because when I bought my last bike, it was like the top of the line Giant at the time was like $1,000, right? So I was like, man, I'm gonna spend like $2,000. I'm gonna get something sick. And I walked into the shop and I was like, hey, I want to get a mountain bike. And the guy's like, so you want like a downhill bike, a cross country bike, like a trail bike? And I just looked at him like, a mountain bike, dude. I said I want a mountain bike.
Yeah. I'm going to the mountains.
What are you talking about? You know the ones that have like the stubby tires on them?
What is with this guy? I feel like he's threatening me or something.
Right? What is happening here? And then it was just like, wow, I was just blown away by how much all the technology changed. And even now, I mean, it's like, shit, at this point, that was freaking quite a while ago. It was like 15 years ago or something like that. You know, it's like, it's changed so much even now where like you have a friend that has a bike that's 5 years old and they're like talking about upgrading it. And to me, I'm like, no, sell it, buy a new bike. Because there's no upgrade you're going to do to a 5-year-old bike that's going to make it as good as the way the geometry is now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I think suspension and geometry are the main things that have like continued to make bikes evolve for the better over the last while.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the other changes, a lot of like the weird things that just make you buy a different hub or
right,
a different crank, or make it so you can't have like a nice set of Chris King or Hadley hubs anymore because every frame is different for no reason.
Yeah.
It's like the unfortunate part of the industry being in the system that we are in, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, it's crazy what like, oh, this seat tube is 1 degree different and the freaking head tube angle is like 1 degree different. And
yeah, I mean, like, oh wow, from like road geometry, right? Like in the beginning, it was all road geometry. You basically had a road bike and you're putting bigger wheels on it and smashing down hills.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's tucked and leaned and everything's steep and terrible.
Yeah. Everything was shitty. And it's like the type of trails that you can ride now compared to then it's just so different.
And then you go and ride trails that were super gnarly 15 years ago and they're still gnarly. You're like,
yeah,
fuck.
Yeah. You're like, how the hell were these guys doing that? Right. So, when do you think that Air Shock will be coming out in the States?
I don't expect it to be available for purchase until like early next year, maybe even pushing into early spring, the latest, hopefully. And
then as far as all the coils that you guys have, I mean, those people that are listening, they can't see the shelves behind you just stocked with all kinds of stuff. Do you guys have any kind of like supply issues from COVID, or is like
I mean, with the whole COVID thing, I think everybody saw some issues with raw materials, everything going a lot slower. I have to hand it to the crew in Italy, though. They've like really found a way to keep things rolling and be resilient through times where there was just not much available. Yeah, we definitely had some things happen, but at this point, we're good. have
It's
stock on
business as
everything.
usual now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, somebody orders something, you guys have it in stock. It's not
For the most part. Yeah. Yeah.
What's that process go like? So when they order it, then they fill out the form, and like, how long does it take from that until like they get something at their house?
It kind of depends on what's going on here, but we are usually within a few days, a week. Occasionally we'll have a size that's back ordered, or we're waiting on a part, or we're having like some QC issue, something like that slows it down to a few weeks. But yeah, we try really, really hard to have things ship within a week of getting an order.
I know a lot of people say, you know, with coil that spring is based off of your weight. So how much weight can you like gain or lose before you need to get a different spring?
So yeah, I mean the coil is just, it's based on your weight and like the leverage rate of the bike, and then also how gnarly the rider is. Because homie that is hitting huge shit is gonna run like a way less sag than guy that's just sitting down and like putting through rock gardens and wants his wheel to move as quickly as possible so he doesn't get bounced around too much.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a few things to take into consideration there. But what was the rest of the question?
I forgot, dude. I started reading the comments and I was like, oh shit, that's a good question. One of the guys in the comments was asking, you guys ship internationally? It doesn't matter?
No, we're strictly in the United States. There's a distributor in Canada called Alba Distribution. You're up that direction.
So if this guy in particular is in New Zealand, would he just contact like the Italy one or?
No, there's a distribution guy in New Zealand for sure.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, right on. Well, then you could just look it up. Just go to the website, the EXT website.
Yeah, if you go to the main one, the extremeshox.com, they're in the process of like redoing their whole site and making it a little bit more user friendly. But if you fumble around enough, you can find a list of all of the distributors and their contact and where they're at and everything.
Okay, cool.
But soon you'll see like on their main site, like an interactive map and some other things that'll make it a lot more user friendly.
Right on. So they're a new company, so they're still trying to work all that stuff out. So
yeah, totally.
I remembered the question earlier. I was asking about how much weight you could gain or lose. So like, I think you had me on a 750-pound coil, I think is what it was. Does that sound right?
I don't know what we gave you.
Okay, sounds good.
One of the other guys does. I could look it up, but
yeah. Anyways, so let's just say that's what it is. So, if I was to lose like 20 pounds, would I need to get a different coil, or a different spring, or is it like there's something you can just adjust on there, or?
You can try to just like add or subtract compression, get it to work. If you're pushing 20 pounds, you're borderline needing another spring. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think like with your day-to-day setup, you got a pack, you're changing 10 pounds, depending on if you're carrying water, gear, first aid, sandwich, whatever.
Yeah.
But,
Definitely. I was just trying to get an understanding. Like, I've been working on losing weight this last year or so. So I just wasn't sure. And I think with some other people, that's one of those things where they're always like, it's one of those things that people say about coils that is like a deterrent for some reason, but most people like aren't really fluctuating their weight that much. So
yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, for sure. They're not as adjustable as an air shock. That's been the reason that air shocks have taken off. And it's a conversation that I've had with my colleague Stu here a number of times. Is like the air shock has had like such a prominent place in mountain bike history because it gave the adjustability. It made it so easy, right? Like you could walk into a bike shop and they could just set the suspension up for you more or less right there really quickly.
Yeah.
And you could just get out and know what you're doing. Or, I mean, you could just get out and ride the bike and you didn't really have to know what you're doing. You just like throw some air in it, check the sag, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
And so like despite many of their drawbacks in terms of, drag,
I think the big one that you mentioned, at least to me, that I think is like on these long sustained downhills like what we have here in Northern California, that thing it'll heat up and it'll not perform like it did at the first 3 miles that I descended, and
the coil just keeps working.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's just
the consistency of performance is huge.
Right. Yeah, it stays that way.
Like for me, that's always like trumped all the drawbacks.
Yeah.
Like I tried every air shock except for like the cross country ones because I was never riding cross country.
Yeah.
And yeah, coils have just been they just ride so much better consistently.
Right.
Right. Before the EXT came onto the market, I was like a huge fan of the King Creek double barrel. I was rocking that damper all the time. Small bump sensitivity was killer. You can get it to adjust however you want, make it feel however you want.
I
don't know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely I think the only other downside that I could think of would be, your buddy comes over and you're not going to be like, hey, yeah, ride this bike, like because his is in the shop or something. It's like, unless you weigh the same as me, dude, you're not going to like this. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's definitely.
But realistically, like,
but now you've got companies like Spring Decks putting out springs, right? So like, I have a homie that has a rental shop. He's down in Moab. His shop's called Double Down, and we've talked to him before about like offering EXT as an option for some of his rental bikes for like high-end people that are interested in the product. And a huge drawback is like, well, it's a coil. I was like, it's a pain in the ass. I have to switch a coil out every single time somebody takes the bike. The Spring Deck springs are cool in that scenario. In that application, I think they really shine. Are you familiar with those?
No, so it's like an adjustable spring or something?
Yeah, totally. It's just a spring that's like the gradient of the line changes and it allows space for like a little plastic wedge to move in and out. And like the more your spring is angled vertically, that's vertical. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Horizontally.
Sure.
The more easy it moves, and then the more vertical it gets, the harder it moves. Right. That's kind of like the concept of like the progressive coil. And so it's really easy for them to like put a little wedge in there, and as the spring comes down and then it goes like this, they can just like adjust it and then change the rate pretty easily. So you can have like an adjustable coil with just like a couple clicks.
Oh wow. Well, that's
and they fit on the EXT dampers perfectly. They're I'm pretty sure they're like the same ID of our coils.
That's really interesting. Somebody else here in the comments brought up something that I think is interesting as well. I didn't think about is a lot of these bikes have flip chips and stuff on them. How would that change with like the way that you guys would tune the shock or anything like that? Does that matter?
It depends on the bike, but for the most part, the changes are subtle enough that you either won't notice, or if you do, you can make it up with just like adjusting the clickers, which emphasizes the importance of like knowing what your clickers do. If you
that's why I just call you, man. I have no clue what I'm doing there. So, but whatever voodoo you sprinkled on that thing the last time I talked to you, it worked really well. So.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. That was definitely good stuff there. You said that with the suspension syndicate that you guys do the Vorsprung stuff. What? How do you feel about that with all the forks and stuff, man? I knew some people running that like the Seekist, and they won't shut up about it. Like it's really good.
Vorsprung does a really good job. Like when they release a product, they really comprehensively think about what they're doing. And the Seekist is a killer product, man. It really is.
Yeah.
compared to like everything else out there that is trying to do a similar thing. Once you get, in my opinion, once you get into like the runt, for example, you're kind of splitting hairs a bit. But yeah, it works really well, man. Like the small bump sensitivity is phenomenal. Traction is great. The air spring curve is killer. Like, yeah, I strongly recommend it if you're considering it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, maybe I should try this or buy a new fork. First, look at your fork, make sure it's in really good shape.
Yeah.
And worth putting some money into. But
right.
Yeah, they work really well, man.
Yeah, I know some people even that just got the Luftkauf, which is not quite as much as the Seekis, but even that they've been like, man.
Yeah, great bang for your buck. Absolutely. Yeah, great bang for your buck. Totally.
So you guys do all that stuff at the suspension syndicate? Like if anybody wanted to hit you guys up or whatever to have their stuff done, they just send it to you just the same?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We try to work with as many aftermarket suspension component companies that are putting out cool products that make sense and work well as we possibly can.
Yeah.
We also do like a little bit of our own stuff here and there. You'll probably see more from us come down the pipeline as time goes on. We do everything from service to setup to custom tuning into like the aftermarket realm, like we're talking about. Yeah.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
As far as EXT goes, are you guys going to be at like events where there's a bunch of demos and on some bikes where people would be able to go give them throw a leg over one or?
Yeah, we try to. We were just at Nationals. We handed out a bunch of shocks. People were stoked. We had people borrow our shocks and take podium on them, which is really cool.
Yeah, right.
Never riding one before, and they're just like, dude, this thing rips, man.
So
last year,
like Outer Bike or like Sedona or something like that, where like the demos would actually.
Yep, we did Sedona this year. We'll be at Sedona next year. We're going to be at Idaho this year.
What's Idaho? I've never heard of that.
It's just like a event at this. Honestly, I can't remember what the first time I'd ever been there was last year, so I don't remember what resort it's at.
So like Sun Valley or something like that, like up there where it's like lift access or.
It's a lift access.
Yeah, it must be Sun Valley probably, huh?
It's fun. They got some really fun trails. It's a cool scene. We liked it last year, so we're gonna go back this year.
Yeah.
Last year we were a little more focused on going to like a bunch of festivals and trying to like
get the word out.
Yeah, and like demo product. This year we've been hitting a little bit more of the race scene. In time we'll be able to do both as our crew grows and our budget grows. But we intend on trying to be at all the big races as time goes on and keep doing the demo days as much as we possibly can. And then also trying to find good shops and reputable suspension guys out there that want to work with us. Like we're trying to open shops and looking for dealers and trying to build a net in which we're working with people that can properly support this product and are passionate about it. So anybody listening out there,
there's definitely a couple of guys around. There's a couple of guys around here locally that I'll mention it to because it's nice to be able to have somebody local that knows how to do all that stuff, like what you're talking about, like putting in Vorsprung or CKS or being able to work on something like this and not have to ship it off. That would be rad. So, I mean, I think that it's only a matter of time till the EXT stuff is everywhere because honestly, the product it sells itself once you're on it. You know what I mean? Like
for sure, man, it does.
It's definitely a matter of like, all right, well, every bike that I want from now on is going to have this on it.
Yeah, if you get on one that's tuned right, man, it does. It kind of ruins you. It's like shit. So every bike I buy is going to cost this much more now.
Yeah, 100% where I was. I was like, I have a good idea that I think like the like Santa Cruz's like redoing their bikes to fit coils. And
it's good.
Yeah. So, and I think part of it is that, they're so much more tunable now than maybe they were before. So maybe that's why bike companies didn't pay attention to it as much, But what do you think?
No, I feel like there was this huge thing in the industry, in the bike culture, that was like really pushing to make things as light as possible.
Yeah.
I think that had a lot to do with it. But I mean, that's digressed a lot in the last 5-7 years,
Yeah.
Like basically since 29ers turned into like aggressive enduro bikes, all mountain bikes, free ride bikes, people have accepted that your bike doesn't have to be light.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I don't really care personally. Yeah. Like I strap so much shit on my bike, dude. It probably weighs almost 45 pounds, because I just don't want to put any of it on my back, sure. Like I got 2 water bottles on there and a tube, and it's like, what the fuck, man, this thing's heavy as hell. But when I'm going down the trail, I mean, it does what it's supposed to do, and that's all that really matters to me. I don't really care about like what it looks like on a scale,
Oh yeah, I mean, we're seeing some really interesting ripples coming out of like the e-bikes, right?
Yeah.
You have all of this weight really down low. Some interesting frame design changes coming out of a few companies, and guys in the World Cup messing with like weighting their bike in certain places to like put the weight in a good relationship with like their hubs and like.
Dude, I rode that zeroed bike a few years back, and because it's a gearbox bike, that gearbox is all down low, and then they take some of that weight off the rear wheel because the derailleur's not there and stuff. And that bike, when I first rode it, it felt like you had a keel going through corners.
Yeah,
like it was just so glued.
I like that bike too. Because of where I live, I could never deal with like the lag pedaling over the gearbox, but I love the idea of the gearbox. Like I want it to work. I want somebody to do it in a way that you don't have that lag, right?
No, I'm with you 100%.
Dude, yeah.
My buddy,
in some places it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In certain places where like you're going through something super gnarly and like you only may get like a couple quarter strokes of a pedal to get you through.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all you got.
I know I'm friends with the guy that runs Sticker. They do like custom stickers for mountain bikes and stuff.
Yeah, he's a cool. He's made us some stickers too.
Yeah, and him and I, we rode those zeros together. He ended up buying one, and like that day, like he got on it, and for some people, that like the way that you shift those, it just like clicks to them, and they're fine. And he was like that, and me all day long, it'd be like, man, damn it, I'm like not getting like shifting right or something. And I'm sure if I rode it more, it would be all right.
Oh, I know I'm talking about like the shifting. Like the shifting's pretty instant with the gearbox. But it's just like when you stop pedaling and then start again to where the time that your pedal engages into your
I see what you're saying.
Your hub.
Yeah. So I just had a little bit of issue with the shifting, but like what you were saying about the gearbox, like wanting it to work, I'm 100% like the same way. I feel like personally, I've said this on this podcast a million times. People are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but you put the derailleur like the like key part of the drivetrain on a bike that's supposed to ride through rocks down on the ground as close to the rocks as possible.
It's been a really challenging thing to figure out a way to negotiate a different remedy of like how you're going to do it,
Yeah.
There's a company, I'm not going to be able to remember it off the top of my head, that's making a drivetrain that like the rear derailleur is like tucked in. So like the rear triangle is pretty wide and it's kind of like tucked into the hub. I think they're using
I saw that.
Yeah. Nikolai just picked that company up and is going to put it on one of their bikes.
Yeah, that was over in Eurobike, and I think they had that bike at Eurobike. It had an EXT shock on it too.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. It was I was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh man, I hope like even if they just moved the derailleur into the triangle on every bike,
it'd be huge.
I'll be like much happier than I am right now. I got a buddy, he bought this Scott last year, and I swear to God, every like 5 rides, that guy breaks a derailleur hanger. It's just like,
It's rough, dude.
yeah, for whatever reason, man, it just like doesn't like to keep them on there. So
He's like, I don't know what it is. I always got a hip to the right towards the trees.
right, right. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, if people are like kind of questioning whether or not they want to try a shock like or a coil shock, like what would be kind of like how would you approach that to like if you were talking to somebody at a party and they're like, I don't know, man, like what is like your elevator pitch, I guess you could say, for using one?
Using a coil shock?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, man, I just feel like they work better in almost every situation.
Yeah.
And it's so much more consistent that like it just seems like for me it's always been like no question, you know. I'm like, I understand the want to have like the progressive element of the coil, or I mean of the air spring, where you can like push into it, jump with it. Totally, like for certain applications, if you're like hitting jumps all the time, you're dirt jumping, you're doing slope style stuff, it may not make sense. The EXT has been really, really exciting because it's been like the first progressive damper on the market, where the progressive element is the damper itself. And
so what does that mean for somebody that's not like super suspension?
So like if you think about an air shock, I'm just gonna grab one, but I won't.
Yeah.
Like as it ramps up, the air spring becomes more progressive as it's compressed, because the PSI in the can becomes greater and greater exponentially.
Yeah. So the way that I could explain that for people, I think I have a good example, is like when you do a drop on your air shock, at the first part of like hitting the ground, it feels like cushy, like you're in a marshmallow. And at the end of it, you feel like it finally feels like a spring, where it's like you feel it getting like slowing you down more and like fighting the gravity. And that's that's the curve that you're talking about, where it's like super plush, and then all of a sudden you just feel it like ramps up like super fast.
Totally.
Yeah.
So like it's great for like for jumping, and like once you get a muscle memory associated with what your shock's doing and what your bike's doing, and where you can get pop from it, like it's the shit.
Yeah.
So like the EXT dampers, they do it through the damper. So instead of being like the coil, where it's like an elastic effect, meaning like in the beginning of a stroke, it's going to act a certain way. In the end of the stroke, it's going to act a totally different way. The EXT damper does the progressive element is the damping itself. So like once you get everything tuned how you want in a way that works for your riding style, I can be like in the beginning of the stroke and like push into the damper and get back out of it. I don't have to go all the way down to where the air spring starts to ramp up to pull my energy back out. It's like it's anywhere in the stroke. You know what I'm saying?
So the EXT has a little bit of an air shock in it too.
Well, in terms of
like that little piggyback, does that have air in it, or
nitro air? Yeah. No, I mean just in terms of like the riding quality, or I guess like the certain riding characteristic you can get out of an air shock. It's not the same, but in a lot of circumstances, I would argue that it's better because it's dynamic. Yeah.
Narkill here in the comments says coil equals consistency, and I think that's like that's really a good way to say it, because that feeling that I get when I jump off of something with this coil is like it's consistent the whole time. Like as soon as I hit the ground, like it doesn't have a different feeling for part of it, you know, and it just I think that's nice, because your brain knows how to like how to like manage that. You know what I mean? You know what you're getting no matter what. So
for sure, and like it takes it out of the equation of the variable of the unknown. Yeah. And then once you start like like with these dampers, once you start like really getting to know them and pushing them, you like know what it's going to do when you're, kind of taking risks and you're kind of pushing the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's interesting. How, like, is there something that stops it from like bottoming out? Like, I don't know. I don't ever feel a bottom, so I don't know. Like,
so the damper that you've got is the Astoria, and so that's got a hydraulic bottom control. So like you got your main piston, and then you've got your secondary piston that sits on top of it. It's a simple piston, but that goes into a secondary damper tube in the last 15%, and changes like the compression really radically. It's velocity dependent. So like if you go into a bottom out situation really slow, like you hit this huge jump and the landing is like really long, and you're just like way down into it. You might find the bottom of the shock because you entered it really slowly.
Right.
If you so it was kind of like cushioning that, I was allowing for that bottom out feature to have a variable to it. Where if you hit something really fast coming off a drop or a jump and you just go straight to bottom, all of a sudden, instead of like allowing you to kind of go all the way through the bottom, it gives you a bunch of compression resistance through that last 15%. That's why they run like the little tiny bottom out bumper that almost does nothing. All done through oil.
So on the shock that I have, what are the clickers? So you got a rebound on there. What else you got on there?
You got the rebound. Low speed compression is in the middle. High speed compression is on the outside. Yours has got the switch. This particular damper has the externally adjustable HBC. So that's the hydraulic bottom control. So you can change where that threshold enters, basically. And then the Astoria has both the switch and the HBC adjustment.
Right on. So it's pretty straightforward then.
Yeah.
And then the prices of the shocks were like between like $1,100 and $1,250. I think.
$1,250. For the Astoria.
So that would be that's that then. What are you excited about with EXT, man?
Yeah, I'm excited about everything. I'm really amped on the direction we're going, the direction that the designers are going, with the relationship that we're building with Italy, with the position of where we're at, both in like the market, but in our like immediate lives, and having the time to put into it to make it grow. I'm talking all of it, man.
Do you guys have any influence on like how it's being developed or anything like that, or?
Marginal.
Like
we're there, and it's like I feel like the direction we're going in as our relationship strengthens. They're more susceptible to certain ideas and things. So it just kind of depends, but actually it's pretty cool. I say marginal, but I feel like in comparison to like other companies, maybe, I feel really good about everything. They really want to know what's going on out there, and they're like, they ask the questions, they want the feedback. They want to know what people are in the United States and people abroad are looking for in a damper, in a shock, in a fork. And they're like, seem to be very susceptible to the feedback and the information that we're able to provide, which is really cool. A lot of fun.
I think some people, like me, when I was first talking, is like the price is something that, it's scary to spend that much money on something that you don't know how it's going to work. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
But so with that being said, like some people maybe will go look and say, well, I know Fox, and they have a coil, but their coil is like half the price of like what a push or an EXT would be.
I don't know. It is and it isn't. Like things are going up and up. Like the Fox coil damper now is about $700. Their coil is 130. So you're pushing 830.
Oh, so they kind of like
like ours is 1100. Comes with 2 coils. Comes tuned for your bike. Like by the time you got a Fox, got a coil, if you leave it at that, that's what you're looking at. 830, 850. If you want to go to the extent of sending it to a tuner, you know,
right,
another $150 or more.
So then basically you're in the same boat.
It's getting more comparable for sure.
I see.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure. I mean, I've never looked at it more than just like whatever that initial price was. I didn't realize that that you had to buy a coil then on top of it as well. So that's definitely and then at the end of the day, like having somebody set it up for you,
like the RockShox stuff, there's a big price benefit too, I would argue.
What's that?
The RockShox stuff.
There's
a big price incentive. Like it's not very expensive.
But you're not going to get the same kind of quality.
Well, yeah, exactly. You just don't have the support. You don't have the product. You don't have the quality. You don't have the support.
And then you would probably So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I would imagine that as these different companies are designing for coils, that you're going to start seeing them more and more on bikes, and then who knows, like how things go. You know what I mean? Like it. I mean, honestly, like one of the things that people would always bitch about before in the past would be like how much they weigh so much extra, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
But like in the case of an e-bike, like, well, that doesn't matter. No. You know what I mean? Like,
and they're getting lighter and lighter. Like they're getting pretty light now. Like the EXTs are like really light dampers. They really are. The coils have gotten super light now. You know, everyone's running like the SLS springs and.
So I mean, as far as like picking my bike up and like it being extra weight from putting it on there, I mean, I don't know. I didn't weigh anything. I mean, obviously that thing weighs more than what my air shock was, but it didn't make my bike feel any different from that aspect. I mean, the way that it made my bike feel different was better. So it wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh man, this is an extra half a pound or whatever, how many grams it is. Like, oh, this is rough. It was like, no, dude, I'm freaking stoked right now. You know, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not every mountain biker is like me. You know, there's definitely still guys out there that are like, you know, paying $900 for a derailleur cage. You know,
there's always going to be. Everyone's going to have different needs, different wants, be happy and fulfilled by different things. The EXT stuff is not for everybody. By all means, it's a performance product. I think more than anything, it's slanted towards people that are kind of pushing it and riding aggressively.
I can fork. I would love to try that fork, man. That thing is just, after riding the shock, it's like, I'm like, how do I get all EXT suspension on my bike? Because this is just like, oh man, it is definitely.
What are you on right now?
Huh?
What are you on right now?
I'm on a Fox 36 right now, but I'm thinking about doing a new build. And I would have, before I realized you guys had a shock, I would have probably, I've been leaning towards maybe getting a 38 just to have more, because I'm a big dude, you know what I mean? And I'm definitely like the way that we ride out here is like you're such long downhills, you know, where you're really working a fork, you know what I mean? So
for sure. Our 36 chassis is very stiff, but the 30, we will have a 38 available early next year. It'll go, I believe, up to 190.
Wow.
160.
But even the 36, dude, like honestly, like it's one of those things where I really question it, because I have a buddy just built a new common cell, and he put a 38 on there, and he's just like really loving it. So it's like got my interest, like, oh well. But I have another friend that has a bike that he built with a 38, and he's like, man, it's just so much extra weight. He said he really notices it. So
yeah, totally. A guy my size, I would never need. 36 is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, dude, from like a suspension tuning perspective, like EXT aside, like, dude, once you get like a Fox chassis, like there's so much you can do with that, you know, between like messing with the damper, like we're talking about different aftermarket air springs, or air spring kits and different things. I've got a 36 here that we have like a full AVI damper coil conversion kit in, and we use that for a lot of product testing.
Mm-hmm.
It's solid, man. Like a 36 chassis is
Yeah, it's pretty good.
proven. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested, man. That's for sure, dude. Like you guys definitely piqued my interest for sure. There is I cannot stress to people enough to go out and try it. Like if you're considering picking up a coil, give these guys a call, because it was really like that different to me, where it totally changed my perspective on how I was riding bikes and how I was buying them.
Yeah.
And
what do you mean? You said it's been like brutal hot where you're at right now. What, you been riding at all? You been traveling to ride, or?
No, I ride like every day, man.
Oh, nice, dude. Really?
Just retarded. Just go out there and freaking sweat everything out. But yeah, no, I do a little bit of road riding on like kind of like recovery days, and then other than that, I'm like on my mountain bike probably 4 days a week. So but yeah, I mean, the heat out here has been rough, that's for sure. But we can get up to Tahoe. It's not as hot up there. So I'm pretty fortunate that way. It's only, an hour and a half or something like that, depending on where we're going, to go up and get into that higher altitude. And the plus side is it's cooler. The downside is that you can't breathe as well when you're trying to climb. So
right, sure.
So it's a little give and take, but I mean, to be able to go somewhere and go downhill for 9, 10, 12 miles at a shot, like
it's pretty good.
Yeah, like that's freaking rad. And some of those places that you can shuttle, or have you ever ridden up here in Northern California?
A little bit, not a ton. I've ridden in like North Star and some of the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
But no, I really want to come and ride more in those areas.
Yeah.
Just scratch the surface, I feel like.
Yeah, if you can come in like fall or spring, whenever the dirt is good and it's not so like if you can get here like before it starts snowing at the high altitude stuff, where it's like, oh, it's rained tonight here or rain tonight there, the trails start like getting really tacky, or in the spring whenever it's like, hey, the snow just melted, this trail's open now, and you have like this window where it's just crazy good dirt and there's long rides. But I mean, even if you come midsummer like now, it's like,
still stuff to do.
Yeah, I mean, you go to Downeyville, you're going downhill for 14 miles. It's like hard to bitch about that, right?
Shit, yeah.
Then you get in a van and drive back up and do it again, So
yeah, I try to come out there every now and then. I feel like my fall is pretty packing up at this point, but I bet you like spring or something I can make it back out that direction. I got a homie in Mammoth I need to go see too, so maybe I could do like
Mammoth is pretty far south from us, but
it's a big like this.
Yeah, big circle.
Yeah.
But even if you were to come like in like tail it on to Sea Otter or something like that, it's not that far to drive up to Sacramento or the Tahoe area from there and then make your ride home, you know what I mean? So and weather, I think Sea Otter is they're doing that in spring now. They just did that in fall last year, huh?
Yeah, because this year was spring.
Yeah. I think they did that one in the fall because the spring, like COVID one, screwed it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, but even in the spring, like that's April, I think, is when they do that. So some of the high altitude stuff probably isn't out of the snow yet, unless it's been a really light year. Usually it's like mid-May, maybe June. If it snowed a shitload, you won't even get the Tahoe until like July. But or like some of the real big epic rides, But yeah, that's the thing, about traveling to ride. It's really fun to go and see different stuff, that's like,
oh man, for sure. And I feel like you kind of have to.
yeah.
You get, to like really push yourself as a rider. You got to go see what's going on and what other people are doing and all these different types of terrain and environments.
It's crazy how much something can change just from one area, like within an hour or two of another place. It's like riding South Mountain compared to riding Sedona. Like they're totally different,
I know. And we're working on a bunch of stuff for like the back end and to like help make our tuning processes better and better. And one of the things we'll do down the road as we continue to refine what we're doing is have more descriptive questions about like the type of terrain you're riding and like what part of the country you're riding in, because it is so different. It really is. Like you tune something completely different from, say, southern Utah to Oregon or Washington, or like it's nothing even close to the same. It's pretty wild.
That's really interesting to think about. Is that something that like I mean, it would make more of a difference for a guy that lives there all the time, but it's like the way this is tuned, is it going to not be a great ride if I go to Oregon or something like that?
Well, I don't think it's any different than if you ride, you have your full Fox set up or your full DVO or RockShox set up, and you have it, all your PSI and your adjustment set up for what you're doing, and then you go ride in Whistler for a week and you have to change everything.
Right.
Everything's different.
Yeah.
Right? You're like pumping up your fork a ton, adding a bunch of compression, lightening up your low speed compression, adding rebound.
Yeah.
And you go back home on your home trails and you're getting tossed around and deflected off of everything.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, this is not. Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's definitely a good point. So right on, man.
Yeah.
What do you think is like really in store for you guys here in this next year? Like just you said some more races, or
we've got a lot of cool things going on in the next year. So we're getting the damper that I keep showing you, this is the Arma Mx, right? So this is the first damper that's been developed for a high performance damper for the e-motos, like the Suron and like Talaria and Segway and that kind of thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we worked with Italy really closely on this particular project. And we're really excited about it.
Yeah.
We've got a fork dropping for that same application. It'll be like a little teaser for what we'll see down the road, probably a year or more from now, for like the downhill application. These things have been fun. It's not mountain biking, right? It doesn't quite hit the tickle the itch like mountain biking does.
Yeah.
But they're pretty fun, dude. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd like to play around on one of those things, man. I know I get myself into trouble for sure.
Yeah. Right.
Just yesterday on Facebook, I used to have an R1. That thing popped up. I was like, oh, my old bike. It gave me that itch of like, yeah, I want to go 175 miles an hour again. I was like, wait a minute. But
we're excited to keep pushing it in that and see where that goes. Excited about the air damper coming out. We're right now, Syndicate and the EXT are sharing a big building. So very soon, probably like this winter, we're going to move EXT into a different facility. So that'll be like really time consuming and be this whole thing. Well, I'm really excited for that. That's going to be super cool. Free up a bunch of space in this building for Syndicate, kind of get EXT into its rightful place of, not sharing a space.
Where are you guys located at?
We're in Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay, so Red Salt Lake. Okay, that's not too far.
Yeah. From
me, I know a buddy used to make that drive. It's like 12, 15 hours, something like that. Not too bad. It's about like driving to Sedona, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Where do you guys ride out around there?
Kind of all over, man. There's a lot of riding in this area. I'm kind of somebody that just chases the conditions, and so during the spring, early spring, we'll ride right at the low lying hills of everything on the Wasatch Front, and then as it gets warmer, start working our way up into the canyons. This time of year, unless you're going ridiculously early, you pretty much got to be in the territory of Park City or like in some of its surrounding areas.
Yeah. Kind of getting up high altitude then.
I spent a ton of time down in southern Utah, especially on the shoulder seasons. During the
I heard that riding down.
Now we've been like going up north, right? Like kind of leaving Utah, going to, we're just spending some time in Colorado, Washington, up into Wyoming.
Yeah. I'd like to make my way over that way and do some riding. That'd definitely be fun. Yeah. Maybe we'll have to set something up.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah. What's the good time of year to be out there? Like if you're like somebody's gonna make a trip, fall, like September, October kind of thing.
Totally. All the high mountain stuff is open. It's cooling off a little bit down low.
Yeah.
Fall's nice.
That's fun, dude. That's exciting to think about, man. I always like going somewhere and seeing how different it is there, because I mean, at the end of the day, dude, it's riding bike, you're pushing, stomping down the pedals, but I mean, even the way that builders build in some areas compared to how they build in other areas is really
completely different.
Yeah.
You find some zones that are like, dude, these guys are doing it right here.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but this is how it should be. In other places, you're just like, Jesus, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely really, really interesting. So, freaking stoked to have you on the show, man. I always ask people before we start wrapping up. You watch YouTube, right?
Yeah.
What kind of channels do you watch? I ask, and it doesn't have to be mountain bike related or anything. It's just fun to hear like what kind of stuff people listen or check out, and sometimes you run into something neat.
You know what, dude? I don't watch YouTube.
No, not that
honestly,
much.
I don't like. I don't know. I feel like I used to some, but
just random stuff. Then
random stuff. I used to spend a lot more time surfing the internet. I used to mainly like more information based stuff. Like more in like.
Dude, you're running 2 companies right now. Like I can imagine, not a lot of free time.
No, I have a lot of free time. Yeah, I don't. I'll be lucky if I get like an episode of South Park once a week, and
there you go.
Like maybe.
Yeah. Right on, man. Is there anything that you want to say about EXT that maybe we didn't touch base on?
I don't know. Probably. I'll probably look back and be like, man, I should have mentioned that and that. I guess I'll have to get Robert to get me back on the show.
Yeah. Just give me an email, man. I can definitely bring it up, because I'm super stoked about the product, man. I mean, you guys are killing it, and it's cool to see it growing, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us about it. And if anybody has any questions, throw them up in the chat or in the comment section, and we'll do our best to get them answered along the way here. So
yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. And like, again, sorry it took so long.
No worries there at all, dude. These things happen. Everybody that's listening, if you haven't hit the thumbs up, if you're watching this on YouTube. Yeah, I can't even remember where I'm doing this at. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. If you like the content, hit subscribe. If you're a podcast listener and you haven't subscribed to the podcast, do that, because that helps the algorithm as well. Like I said earlier, if you guys want to write a review, do that. That would be rad. I really appreciate everybody spending the time to sit down and listen to this, as well as us, as well as Cody taking the time to sit down and talk with us. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to remember one thing. It only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.